Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to Articlation Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review on the channel. At last, it's been ages since my last review, and as you can see on the screen right now, today's installment is going to be taking a closer look at the new G.I. Joe Classified Series Lifeline figure. So stick around, folks. I'm going to give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs that you need to know about Lifeline. So if you've been thinking about picking one up for yourself, you can make a nice, thorough, educated decision about it. I'm going to start by taking a look at the packaging and talk about the mint in box experience for those who keep them in the packaging. Then move on to the figure, talk about the aesthetic and the visual experience. Then move on to the articulation and the posability. Give you a nice rundown of all the accessories and added value, and then drop him in next to a couple of other classified figures so we can see how he displays up. And with all that said and done, you should have plenty of information to know whether Lifeline is the right figure for you, whether he's worth cracking open your wallet or purse for. So let's get into it, and let's start by jumping back in time to visit past Chris, who's taken a look at the packaging the day it arrived on my doorstep. Here we go. Okay, folks, well, here is Lifeline in packaging then, and as you can see, it's the standard G.I. Joe Classified Series packaging we've been seeing for a while now. Got the carbon fiber motif with the logo at the bottom here, symbol to indicate Joe character, Hasbro logo, the name in the top left-hand corner, G.I. Joe Edwin Lifeline Steen, and then, of course, the big window there showing off the figure and all the goodies. On the back, we can see he's 186 in the line. We've got the digital render action shot with a couple of breakaway windows showing off a few highlighted features. Got the legal bollocks and malarkey all across the bottom there. And then, of course, we've got the file card information. Let's learn more about Lifeline together, shall we, folks? First up, we've got the asterisks here. You may or may not be aware, but Lifeline is a massive grammar nerd. He spends all his time trawling forums and social media posts correcting people's grammar, particularly when it comes to the use of asterisks and footnotes. Asterisks? I've got a feeling someone called me out on a comment for missaying asterisks. Anyway, this one here is a pile of bed linen. Lifeline's weird about bed linen, so much so that when he travels, he takes his own with him. He takes it off the hotel bed and puts his own on. Then we've got this little radio tower here. This is because Lifeline's got an extensive vinyl collection of old-time radio serial broadcasts. Used to love the soaps, particularly the Archers. And then finally here, we've got his little medical bag, because he's like a medical guy, isn't he? I couldn't think of one for that one. Got the artwork here on the side. Looks fine, I suppose. I've been off with the artwork on the packaging for quite a while now, and this has got that AI-generated trash vibe about it again, I'm sorry to say. And on the other side, the number again, the file card again, the QR code to nowhere, sepia tone version of the artwork, as per usual. So there you go, folks. There is Lifeline in packaging for the mint in box folks, or the people interested in the shelf presence, the packaging presence of the figure. But I'm not mint in box. I'm going to go away and get this bad boy cracked open, get good and hands-on, pose him up, do some displays, take some photos, jot down a few review thoughts, and I'll be back with those review thoughts in just a moment. So stick around, because Future Chris is going to be with you in 3, 2, 1... And we're going to kick things off by talking about the aesthetic experience, the visual experience with the Lifeline figure. And here he is, just the core figure, so stripped all the accessories and extra bits and bobs off him. We'll talk about the accessories a bit later on, because obviously a couple of these do add to the visual identity, the visual experience of the character. But here he is, just the kind of core, head-to-toe view for you to kind of soak him in. And clearly, he's very heavily inspired by the OG vintage figure. The colour combination, the broad uniform design, some of the finer detail touches are just kind of 6-inch, more elaborate, embellished versions of the way the uniform was put together on the original figure. And, of course, for comic book fans and for cartoon fans, that's fine, because the OG figure, the comic book aesthetic, and the cartoon aesthetic were all very, very similar. You know, that red jumpsuit with rescue written down the leg with the white trimmings. Getting in a bit closer so we can inspect the finer details here. Let's talk about the head sculpt. And actually, in hand, for my eyeballs, the head sculpt's not that bad. I know regulars around these parts will be aware that when we first saw the render reveal and then when we first saw the in-hand reveal, I was a little bit skeptical about the head sculpt. But actually, now that I've got him in hand in front of me, it's not too bad. I'd probably say, though, the head sculpt is the part of him that is the furthest departure to kind of how he looked and felt in the comic book and the cartoon. To me, to be clear. I felt like it was a bit slimmer, but that's fine. It's come together well. It's up to the usual G.I. Joe Classified Series standard. All the facial features are well sculpted. You know, you can see the chin line, the cheeks, the nose, etc., etc. Well applied paint applications for the eyebrows, the eyes, and all that good stuff. The hair is a bit flat, but I kind of, you know, put that down to a bit of a narrative, you know, that he's got, you know, he's suffering from a bit of hat hair, which we all get. I certainly get it. Anyone who's watched my on-camera work will know I have hat hair a lot of the time. So who am I to throw shade? But what I will say is that I've got straight out the box, you see on the top here, there's a bit of paint chipping going on, and that was right out the packaging. That's not happened over the last couple of days while I've been playing with him. That was just there, that paint chipping. And then moving down further into the body, we can see the paint applications across things like the pouches on the arms and down his chest here. You've got the zip piece sculpted in with paint application on the white zip. Got the little emblem on his chest, which is nice. Little readout thing on his belt. You can see sculpted details for the zip coming down and texture details in there, which is all nice to see. Of course, the elephant in the room. Let's get to it. I've been like moving around it to show things off, but here it is, the gun holster across the middle here. Now your mileage with that will obviously vary as to whether you want your comic book stroke cartoon accurate pacifist Lifeline, or whether you want you know, a 6-inch representation of the original vintage figure, which did have the cross holster there, the cross draw holster on him. I'm pretty sure it is removable. I've not tried to remove it. I did apply a bit of heat. What I will say is that it's very tightly fitted across his shoulder and under this armpit here. It's very high and very tightly fitted. And I'm finding it very difficult to, like, I want to spin it a bit there, and it's just all very tightly packed in. So even if you were a holster fan, you might find it a little bit tricky because it's kind of just weirdly high up and in the way, and got in the way of some of the poses that I was trying to do. Also, I hate these rubber pop stud things. I find them very impractical. So, you know, your mileage will vary with that. I'm pretty sure you could heat it up or snip it off if you were so inclined to get rid of it and not have it on your Lifeline. But if you were keeping it, just bear in mind, it feels very high and tight, and it sort of twists under his arm there. Can you see? So, yeah, it is what it is. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm not so fussed, but you might be a pacifist Lifeline fan. He's got 2 belts. He's got the overbelt and the belt underneath there, sculpted details with the belt loops painted, which I'm always a fan of when you've got actual painted belt loops, and then the white plastic belt over the top, which is fine. It's got sculpted details in here, but it's quite plasticky, quite sheer, but at least it's got the details in there. And I mentioned the little readout on his belt piece here. Now, one of the key visual identity features on Lifeline is the large rescue printed down his left leg. It's here, it's present, although they've gone a little bit smaller, a bit more subdued than we've seen that massive rescue to be before, but still a nice nod to the vintage original design. Very practical. He's got knee pads and elbow pads. What's quite nice about these, I don't know if you can see, they've got kind of little dints and marks in them that show, you can probably see it a bit better on the knee pads there, but little scuffs and marks and dints to sort of demonstrate the active use that he's been out in the field. And then he's got his grey boots, again, just like the original design. Just a quick peek at the back here, because it just helps us see some of that texture detail and that sculpting detail that brings it to life, gives it some depth. You know, you can see it on the sleeves, all the way up the back here, across the back of his top of his jumpsuit, the pockets on the back of his trousers, the pockets on the sides. You know, you can see all that texture, sculpting detail, all the way down to how it bunches up at the top of his boots. And that's about it, really, in terms of visual experience. I suppose this is yet another character that kind of introduces the debate, you know, the kind of fan discussion around how retro and vintage acknowledging should the main line be. They've obviously not left themselves very much room to maneuver should they ever choose to do a retro card back version of Lifeline, because this is, to all intents and purposes, the retro, you know, the 6-inch recreation of that original look and feel character. There's not anything in here that's particularly new or classifiedized. You know, there's not really a great deal of stuff in terms of interpreting him in a new way. And you'll see when we get to the accessories a little bit later on, even they are almost direct 6-inch plastic replications of the original designs, obviously just with that better quality detail that you can get now with modern sculpting and the 6-inch scale. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Your mileage will vary. So yeah, if you're looking for a very classic look Lifeline with all those kind of key visual identifying features that you loved about the original character from wherever you've kind of fallen in love with him from, then this is a good figure for you. If you're hoping for something a little bit new, a little bit different, or perhaps a reinterpretation, you're not really going to get that here. So there you go. But I'm going to overall give it a thumbs up. I think it's working for me. And his shelf presence is great. The red and white just pops. It's just like, hello, look at me, I'm here. Which I love that kind of stuff. So there you go. All right, so there's the aesthetic and the visual experience. Let's now take a closer look at the articulation and posability. And as always, folks, before I get into the articulation, I'll point out that this is pretty standard G.I. Joe Classified Series articulation. So if you're already very familiar with that, not particularly interested, I'll pop timestamps in so you can jump ahead to the next chapter along, which is a closer look at the accessories and added value. However, if this is your first ever G.I. Joe Classified Series review you've ever seen and want to know about the articulation, or you want to know if there's any particular quirks, then stick around and I'll walk you through it, and I'll get started with the head. So we've got the ball in the base of the neck, ball in the base of the head, gives you a pretty decent forward, fairly decent back, all the way around, full 360 exorcist, even with that tall collar. And then, you can tilt and swivel and move it around, all fine and dandy. Then butterfly joint in the shoulder with a hinge and a peg, so you can give it shuffle forward and back, go all the way around, full 360, or T-shape him out, like so. Got the swivel there at the top of the bicep and tricep, pinless double elbow that will get you up to there, and then pegged in hands that can swivel all the way around at the wrist. And then as you can see here, the right hand's got a forward and back hinge on it, and the left hand has got an up and down hinge on it. Hinge in the torso and ball joint at the waist. He's got really good forward crunch there, look. A really good back crunch there. And then you can swivel and move him around nicely at the ball joint. My ball joint, it might be unique to mine, but it sits quite high up. So without this white belt here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap that you kind of have to disguise a bit with the white belt there. But that could just be unique to mine. Got the drop down joint in the groin hip hinge there. The forward and back's pretty good, but it's slightly restricted by these strappy sections. So you can get forward like this, Russian ballet out to there with the belt sticking up. Swivel at the top of the thigh. Pinless double knee that'll get you to there. Boot cut at the top of the boot line for your ankle swivel. And then you got the hinge and rocker on the feet, allowing you to, manipulate the way he stands. So Lifeline articulates fine. If you're a fan of the G.I. Joe Classified Series articulation, which I am, then you'll find you'll get it, a lot out of this figure. My poses that I was trying to go for, I was able to do no problem at all. Not limited by my imagination was not limited by the engineering on the figure. Only two kind of key unique points to mine. My torso hinge is a bit wobbly, a bit loose, and I can just see that getting looser over time. And then you have to do a bit of finessing and pissing about with this belt, with it being attached physically to the legs like that. It rides up, or things go a bit funky and a bit funny when you're trying to do some more ambitious posing, but that's just all about patience and finesse, which I lack. So it's a problem for me, but probably not a problem for you, So yeah, thumbs up on the articulation. All good there. Fine and dandy. Okay, so that's the articulation and posability. Let's now take a closer look at his accessories and added value. And I'm going to start things off with the kind of headwear selection of accessories that comes with Lifeline, beginning with these protective eye goggles that I've got on him right now. So he's got two sets of these, one that is head-sized and one that is sized to go over the top of the helmet. So we'll take a look at the helmet-sized one in a moment. But yeah, these are fine. They're see-through. What appears to be, was it Perspex plastic front there, with a nice grey strap to go around the side, which is a nice bit of colour coordination with his boots. So that's all fine and dandy-o. Then we have Lifeline's signature green lensed shades. You can see they've got a nice bronze or goldy kind of frame on them there, with the transparent green frames in them that he's well known for wearing. The design is slightly different to what you might picture as a comic book or a cartoon fan, but they do the job, no problem at all. They do sit a bit loose, he says, although obviously now while I'm filming it, they're not falling off. But I'm telling you, they kept falling off when I was taking some photos yesterday. Bloody hell, Lifeline, embarrassing me like that. Then we have his helmet. Well, there's two pieces here, actually. The helmet and then the helmet size goggles. So the goggles are the same with the clear lenses, and the grey strap is just obviously a larger loop to fit around the top of the helmet. It's a bit of a faff. You got to stretch it out and roll it down, but is what it is. But then you got the helmet itself. You can see it's got, nice sculpting in there, contour details. It's in the red and white color scheme that the helmet that the character wears has in all your artwork and comic book appearances, etc., etc. Got a little microphone there painted in on the black, so that's nice to see. It looks a bit bulky on him. It's not quite as tight to the head as that original design is, but I think that's probably just a practical challenge that they've had to make it this big. But I kind of like it. It kind of works. And also the helmet fits with the sunglasses as well. You have to put the glasses on afterwards because of the chin strap and the slightly more snug fit of the helmet. You pop the helmet on and then you have to kind of put the arms of the sunglasses up and then sort of angle it down. But it's simple enough. It's straightforward enough. No problem at all. So you can kind of complete the classified version of that signature look with the helmet and the green shades. Then we've got Lifeline's wide array of, field medical gear, starting with the backpack and the medical case here. In fact, let's focus on the backpack first. It's reflecting a bit under the lights, but you can see that, again, this is directly inspired by the original look and feel of the OG Figures backpack. It's a big chunky single piece of white molded plastic, but obviously they've got some grey paint applications and the little readout display here with, the heart rate and blood pressure and what have you. Being beeped out, so that's all fine. Got the little antenna, nice sculpted details. Oh, and it fits on the back with standard peg backpack system. It has got this little port here on the front. I thought that port might have been for another use, which is the breathing mask, which I'll show you in a second. But if it is, it's not deep enough to hold the tube in. And there is another port that I found in the medical case. In fact, let's have a look at that now. So the white medical case here, obviously, once again, heavily inspired by the white medical case that came with the original vintage figure. So it's got the kind of sculpted hard case details in there with the Lifeline emblem, the red and white emblem printed on both sides. You can then pop that open like so, which then gives you these kind of canisters and surgical scissors and whatever else, bandages and stuff that's all stored in here. That's in some black molded plastic. Again, nice sculpted details, but it'd be nice to have like a metallic paint job over the surgical scissors or something. And then it's in here that the other port, which I think is for the breathing tube, which is there next to this air canister here. A bit hard to see under my lights, but trust me, it is there. Although that's quite shallow too. It's quite a shallow port too. It doesn't hold it in all that well either, but you make it work for a photo, don't you? Then, as I've already mentioned it, here's the oxygen mask. So it's got this long, clear hose on it, and then the nose-shaped mask, although no strap to hold the mask onto someone's head there. It's just, you'd have to hold it in place. And then we've got the saline bag with a little arm strap piece to go around the arm of his patient. And I'll just show you there now. So you've got that little port in here. Bit blurry and out of focus. Sorry, folks. In fact, let me do it off screen where I can see it better. There you go. And there's your oxygen mask in the port there. But as I say, it's quite shallow, so you have to kind of give it a good pushing in. Then Lifeline's got this little knife here, obviously for cutting bandages or slicing open clothing to get to wounds and things, which is fine. Single pieces of sculpted black plastic, which is okay, but regulars around these parts will know I like it when they get a bit of paint on the blade. And then in this other hand, we've got this tiny little torch that you can carry as well. Both of these have storage on figure. Got this little loop ring here on his thigh piece for the torch. And then a little knife sheath on the other thigh there, like so. And then finally, we have the handgun. Pretty confident we've seen this before in the line. Just his little 9mm pistol-y thing here. A single piece of molded black plastic that, is a pistol, which fits in the holster on his chest cross-draw. So, yeah, the accessory selection's all right. Yeah, it's a thumbs up for sure. Obviously all on point in terms of the character with medical equipment or medical equipment adjacent, like a practical knife and a torch and things, so you can let your imagination play a little bit with the concept, play a little bit with the idea of him being a field medic. For the vintage fans, obviously the case and the backpack and the helmet and the green glasses and all that stuff kind of, again, leans into that look. And as I mentioned before, these accessories also kind of tie into the visual experience because they're part of the visual identity of Lifeline to it. And it all ties together really nicely, really well, look, and finishes off the look. So yeah, no complaints here. The only thing to draw attention to is that that port in the case and then possibly that other port on the backpack there are pretty shallow, and the only one I can get it to engage with is the one in the case, which makes me conclude that that's probably the one it's supposed to be in. The backpack one isn't. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Okay, so there we go. There's the accessory selection. Let's now take a look at Lifeline next to a couple of other classified figures, shall we? And to get us started, I've got Lifeline here with what is probably a predictable pairing, really, in terms of display, which is the G.I. Joe Doc. Two of them are kind of giving off very different vibes, and they always have done, but giving off very different vibes. But yeah, the little medical unit there coming together. Here's Lifeline with the first responder firefighter dude. And as I mentioned before, because Lifeline in my world is a member of the Action Force, European, fighting force. Here he is with Retro Flint. Although the two of them have a very different vibe, I feel. They just feel a bit shaped different, don't they, in a way? All right, then, folks. Well, here's Lifeline going around on the turntable, so you can get a nice 360 view of the whole figure. And while you're eyeballing that, I'll offer up some final thoughts. And yeah, he's a solid fig. Definitely a solid fig. I think Lifeline fans who've been waiting for this character to hit the line will be relatively pleased. There's a few little niggles here and there around, the cross holster and stuff, and pissing about with the air mask tube and what have you. But overall, he comes together very, very well. And obviously completes a kind of certain space in G.I. Joe that I think people will want. Like I say, I wanted him because of my knowledge of him from the comic books, but he fits in well with Sunbow cartoon fans. He fits in well with vintage action figure, vintage G.I. Joe figure fans. So all around, okay. Not a lot of complaints here, other than what I said before, that he's not really been reinterpreted. He's very much just vintage figure in 6-inch form, which is increasingly the sort of tone of the line, isn't it? But if you're into that, which is fine by me, it works in this instance. I'm not looking for a massive reinterpretation of the character, then I'm all right, but your mileage may vary. So there we go. Okay, well, head down to the comments below. Let me know your thoughts and let me know if you're planning on picking up a Lifeline or not. Thanks for coming and hanging out. If you found this useful, then give us the thumbs up, like, and all that good stuff. Do the YouTubey button pressing thing. But yeah, all that remains to say is have yourselves a great day, have yourselves a great week, and I'll see you around these parts, folks, for another video sometime soon, which will be another review, because I've got a whole batch of pre-orders came at the same time. So keep an eye out for those. All right, take it easy, folks.